time at Guantanamo, did you witness any incidents?
No, none. All that's BS. No, totally BS.
Governor DeSantis say you were present during those meetings. Is that
Who said that?
Detainees have told us that.
How would they know me? Okay, think about that. Do you honestly believe that's credible? So this is 2006. I'm a junior officer. Do you honestly think that they would have remembered me from Adam? Of course not. They're just trying to get into the news because they know people like you will consume it because it fits your preordained narrative that you're trying to spin. Focus on the facts and stop worrying about narrative.
That's not how you're supposed to do this, Ron. Ron is in a bit of a spiral, and this time being asked. This happens, by the way, at the Museum of Tolerance in West Jerusalem. He's overseas, and he's asked about his past in working in Guantanamo Bay and these potential force feedings that he's been accused of taking part in. And he gets angry. Again, we've seen him answer questions, doesn't really know how to do it very calmly or in a way that seems like he's not cornered, and now has been asked a question about something he needs to deny that happened to be the truth. But here's the thing about this, as again, these detainees, some of them are the ones who pointed out Ron DeSantis as the guy who was a part about this. And why would you believe them? They were detainees. They're terrorists, right? Maybe you should believe Ron DeSantis. Watch this.
Things that would happen is the thing you notice the day you get down there is for these detainees, the jihad was still ongoing. Right. And they would wage jihad any way they can. Now, they're in a facility, so it's limited, but some of the things they would do hunger strikes. And you actually had 3 detainees that committed suicide with hunger strikes. So everything at that time was legal in nature one way or another. So the commander wants to know, well, how do I combat this? So one of the jobs of the legal advisor would be like, hey, you actually can force feed. Here's what you can do. Here's kind of the rules of that.
Just detailing the way that they force fed folks. Why would you know things like that if it wasn't really happening? Oh, who cares? I'm running for, not yet, looking to run for president unless he gets buried beforehand. Here's one of the folks who accused him of this abuse. We mentioned this last year. His name is Mansour Adafi. And he was held at Gitmo without a charge for 14 years before he was finally released. And he answered DeSantis' question directly about how a prisoner could possibly remember him. This is what he said. In 2021, just as my memoir was about to be published, I was on Twitter and I saw a photo of a handsome man, well, I disagree with you there, in a white Navy uniform. It was Ron DeSantis, the governor of Florida. I do not remember what the post was about, but I remembered his face. It was a face I could never forget. I'd seen that face for the first time in Guantanamo in 2006, one of the camp's darkest years when the authorities started violently breaking hunger strikes, and 3 of my brothers were found dead in their cages, as he called it. And he figured that those friends of his that he found dead in cages were actually murdered, he believes, considering the way that they were being treated. But lastly here, he spoke more about it and DeSantis' involvement in torture, the same stuff that DeSantis got really upset about in that question and really showed how much he didn't want to talk about it. Watch more.
Force feeding. I swear by my God, Mike, they brought, piles of ensure and they start force feeding us over and over again. And Ron DeSantis was there watching us. We were crying, screaming. We were tied to the feeding chair, and that guy, he was watching that, he was laughing, basically. It was hurt like hell. And I was screaming, like, when I was screaming, I look at him, and he was actually smiling, like, as someone who enjoying it.
Why believe Ron DeSantis there, was?
Man, that's some pretty harrowing stuff, and it's kind of amazing to me that we're never gonna wash the stink of what came out of 9/11 off of us as a country, man. Because the torture program is, it's just a black mark. This idea that we're America and we're better than them, and we have morals and we have this, and the idea that we're force feeding guys, we're detaining people without charging them, without any lawyers, without anything, and also torturing these dudes. It's crazy. I think the most fascinating thing about this is that Ron DeSantis is the first, if not only, public figure who's had the torture regime hung around his neck. Cheney, Bush, Rumsfeld, Tenet, all of these guys have pretty much skated on the torture question. The idea that Ron DeSantis would be the first public figure to actually have to face some reckoning is just sweet, sweet irony, bro.
It's weird, and he has, again, as you mentioned earlier, dude hasn't even announced a president yet, and he's just getting lumped over the head by a Trump super PAC, then Trump, then this. And I guess that's why he's responding the way he is. A lot of very defensive questions, man. Imagine if he's on the debate stage, how that may go.
And look, he's at the Museum of Tolerance, right? And we know what happened to those folks in those prison camps: death, torture, all of those things that as a country we're supposed to be above. And Ron DeSantis is getting questions about taking part in the torturing of prisoners of war. Wow.
The irony's off the charts because,
Holy
again,
moly.
like other societies, as long as we figure that we can be dispensed of certain folks, then maybe we can just do whatever the hell we want. And the fact that he believed that at one point, and maybe it's changing here, is catching up to him.